Welcome to episode 176 of the Half Point Per Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Riggs, joined as always, although it won't soon be always, Dalton Willie. We're a really understanding company around here at Half Point Per Podcast. To let Dalton take a two week paid vacation the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. But so it goes. So it's the last pod with Dalton for a couple of weeks. We've got my guys coming up. This is also going to be the last draft show. We'll figure out some content next week, and then obviously week one. I'll have us covered with that. But Dalton, how are you doing 2 days out from Japan?
Arigato gozaimasu. We're going to do the entire show in Japanese.
Okay, so the show's going to last 90 seconds. Got it.
That's bold of you to assume I know that much. I'm excited. I am ready for the NFL season to start. I am disappointed about my timing because I won't be able to watch most NFL games with a 15-hour time difference. For all of the listeners, just so they understand how gracious the folks here at Half Point Per Podcast are, I didn't think about the NFL season when I booked this flight. It wasn't really a consideration.
Didn't even give you listeners a thought. I would never.
But I'm giving you all the best draft advice, and most importantly, I'm teaching you guys a lesson. The first 2 weeks of the season aren't what make or break fantasy teams. It's the second half of the season. We're going to talk about some players who in the second half of the season this year are really going to lock in your rooms and win you some championships.
I can't wait for the first pod when you get back where you haven't watched any NFL games and you have to somehow be able to give takes on what's been going on.
I already got some takes. I can give you some right now.
Let's hear it. Let's have you predict the first your takes after 2 weeks right now. Give us a minute.
Yeah, easily. Hey, I know insert backup running back X has had 2 really good games, but if you look at his usage, it's not that good, and you really shouldn't be targeting him on waivers. Hey, I know insert wide receiver 3X has had 2 really good games. We shouldn't do that. Or my favorite, hey, we thought this offense was going to be pretty bad to start the season. They've played 2 pretty poor defenses. Don't overinvest in this offense. Looking at you last year, Saints.
Except they played the Dallas Cowboys in one of those games who, they have Micah Parsons. Oh, they no longer have Micah Parsons, I'm hearing.
I am hearing they also no longer have Micah Parsons, but they have Kenny Clark.
While you were practicing your Japanese in the lead up to this podcast, did you happen to catch any of Jerry Jones' press conference?
I know he got asked one question and spoke for 11 minutes.
Well, he said, because for those who don't know, Micah Parsons out, 2 first-round picks, and Kenny Clark in from the Packers is the deal. He said something to the effect, and it could have been in that 11-minute response to one question, could have been in a response to another question if there was any other questions. I'm sure there probably were many. He said, some of these picks could be all pros. It's like, yeah, they could also be multi-time first team all pros. And so everybody was tweeting out the Peter Griffin box, just picture. It's like, oh my God, I would go crazy if I were a Cowboys fan. I'd go crazy if I was a Dallas fan. I mean, you have Luka and Micah Parsons traded not in the same calendar year, not even a year apart. Just absurd. And Jerry basically admitted, yeah, I could have signed Micah in April, but I didn't, and that was on purpose. And this is how that worked out. Like that's pretty much. Obviously, he didn't quite say it like that, but that's pretty much what he said.
We're all trying to find the guy who did this.
On that note, Dalton, there's nothing to talk about with the Cowboys today. Let's go to the team I know whose trade you're most interested in, and that is the Carolina Panthers shipping Adam Thielen to the Minnesota Vikings. And we can talk about Thielen in a minute. Obviously, Jordan Addison is suspended for the first 3 games, but this might be the Cokeheads' time.
For those who don't know, Jalen Coker's mom liked my tweet Go back February before Coker was ever drafted. I said he is my dark horse of the
I
draft.
thought you were going to explain the cokeheads thing, but it's funnier that you did it that way.
No, we are all cokeheads here at Half Point per podcast. I'm
That's
incredibly
the real
excited.
reason why one of us needs a 2-week vacation.
Well, and then the staff comes out today and says he's going to play in the slot. I mean, it can't really get much better. From the slot last year, he was better than almost every player in the NFL. He was top 10 in yards per route run from the slot last year, behind guys like Justin Jefferson, Brian Thomas Jr., Chris Godwin. Like, he was in some elite territory. Obviously, because of the way that wide receiver room played out, he ended up playing a lot more X last season than slot. But with the addition of Tatori McMillan, they have the opportunity for him to play that slot role. Mm-hmm. And I think it could be a very exciting time. Xavier Legette is still going ahead of him in drafts. I still don't really understand that one. But
me neither.
I think Jalen Coker's poised for a pretty good season.
Yeah, I mean, he's been undrafted, I think, in probably all redraft formats besides best ball right now. And I mean, you and I just participated in a dynasty startup the other day where I stole him from you in like the 28th round of that startup draft. I think the days of Coker being that cheap are probably over. I think he at the very least is going to shoot up to like the last 1 or 2 picks, dart throw kind of range and redraft. And that's a shot that I'm taking every single time, because we've talked about this offense. We've talked about Bryce Young. I think Jalen Coker is a legitimately not like great player by any means, but I think he's a good player and showed as much last season.
Yeah, I know some people listen to this pod will say this is sacrilege, but easily could be like a Khalil Shakir level player. Which
is there anyone in particular that you're thinking of?
We have so many listeners. I'm sure there's a handful of them who feel strongly about that. But I think he really could be like Khalil Shakir, like inside the top 40, has some pretty good games. And if he comes out to be Bryce Young's favorite target, I mean, you have, I would say, top 30 wide receiver upside. I'm not going to get crazy. I've seen some people talking about him in the top 24, but that's pushing it.
Yeah, because I mean, like Tet is going to be the most valuable receiver in this offense, but the best value still is Jalen Coker, and it's been that way all offseason, and as of now continues.
And it hasn't been this way since the 80s that Coke was this cheap. So you got to take your chances now.
Okay. I think I had something else to add there, but now I completely forgot whatever it was I was going to say. We'll head to California on that note. Brian Robinson. There. I think in last week's podcast, I may have like word for word said, he's going to probably really shake up any backfield he gets traded to, unless it's for some reason a team with a really good running back decides to trade for him. Well, about a day later, some team with a really good running back decided to trade for him, and that was the San Francisco 49ers. Two-parter. We've already talked about the Washington side of things last week because we knew this was coming. So go listen to the beginning of last week's show to hear what we think about Bill. But Dalton, first, we haven't talked about Christian McCaffrey really at all. And that's where I want to start. Does this change your opinion on Christian McCaffrey at all? And also just what was your opinion on Christian McCaffrey? Because he's probably one of the pivot points in all fantasy drafts this year.
Yeah. For starters, just as a quick segue, y'all are way too crazy on Bill right now. He's going way too high in drafts now. But when it comes to the addition of Brian Robinson, it doesn't hurt Christian McCaffrey at all, in my opinion. He's one of one. The hard thing with Christian McCaffrey this season, in my opinion, is the top 12-ish players in fantasy football are all pretty solid picks. And Christian McCaffrey comes with more baggage than a lot of those players just because of how last season turned out and the level of fortitude he had to show to get himself back on the field. I think the addition of Brian Robinson is indicative of the rest of that backfield, which is objectively terrible. They have 2 players who aren't going to start the season they expected. Jordan James is questionable. I think Jeff Wilson just signed back with them, or he signed with the Dolphins. One of the 2 teams he's been on 6 times.
I think he signed with the 49ers, but I think he maybe has already been cut. I'm not
Uh,
sure, but yes, he did end up back there
yeah.
some
Uh,
of the time.
but the Brad Robinson trade, first of all, like Washington kept cash. I think it was a pick swap in the late rounds. Like it's not a high value trade. He positions himself to get some goal line work. But outside of that, like Christian McCaffrey, still an 80% snap share player. We'll talk more about the Niners later, but it's not like their wide receiver room's looking bright with all of the injuries they have. And then Juwan Jennings both having a contract holdout and being unlikely to play week one because of an injury. It's a pretty scary situation for them. So he's still going to get his. He's still going to eat. And that offensive line, as long as that left side can stay healthy, he'll still have a pretty solid season. We know what Christian McCaffrey can do.
Yeah, it's fun. I think this maybe for me is a good excuse to bump him down like one spot in the first round, but I can't really get him much lower, despite the fact that, you know, we all know what happened last year. Kyle Shanahan told us he was fine, nothing to see here with the injuries, and then he just wasn't there to start the season. And then he was flying to like Germany to see a specialist. And of course, he came back for a little bit and had a different injury that knocked him out for the rest of the year. So I'm sure he's probably fine. Like we haven't heard anything bad. He hasn't missed time that I'm aware of, but just a little bit scary to jump back in and trust that. But also on the other side of that, he's Christian McCaffrey. Like you said, he for a stretch of time was one of the best fantasy players of all time. And if you can get 90% of that guy towards the end of the first round, that is a fantastic first round pick. But the thing that makes it scary is you don't usually win your league with your first round pick, but you can easily lose your league if your first round pick busts. So, like, I have him ranked pretty highly, not going to move him much, but he's also a guy that I just feel myself shying away from in drafts. I look for an excuse to draft somebody else over him if I'm ever in that spot because it is pretty terrifying to take him and a lot less terrifying to say, you know what? I'll just take Amon-Ra St. Brown because I just feel a lot better that I'm going to get top 5 production at the position if I take him.
Yeah, and I largely agree with that. There's just way more risk with his profile than just about anybody else in the first round, except for maybe Ashton Genty, and that's just because we haven't seen him yet. And I think neither you or I have him as a first round pick.
No.
But yeah, completely agree. Like, I guess where it would get debatable for me, God, who have I become? Josh Jacobs or Christian McCaffrey would be like a tough one for me. That's around the range I see him, which kind of bumps him out of the first round or right there at the 11-12 turn.
Yeah. Okay. And then Brian Robinson, on paper, I think this is probably the best backup that Christian McCaffrey has had. I mean, Jordan Mason, good player. We've both long been Jordan Mason fans and believers, but he didn't actually prove anything as an NFL player until Christian McCaffrey got hurt. So that version of Jordan Mason never played with Christian McCaffrey. And then like Chuba Hubbard again, not near the guy he is now when he was Christian McCaffrey's backup. Raheem Blackshear, I think at some point was backup or third string. Does Brian Robinson actually have any standalone flex value to you, or is this kind of the death knell to his fantasy value, his standalone fantasy value this year?
No, I mean, we saw it last year. Taking the backup to Christian McCaffrey is profitable. And if you're one of the people who thinks he's not there, way more worth it. Like,
yeah, but like, let's say Christian McCaffrey's there. Like, we know if he gets hurt, right? Like, we know he'll be valuable. What if he is there? Is Brian Robinson even a top 40 running back in your mind?
Yeah, I can still see it. Like, their wide receiver room is still so rough that I could see Brian Robinson fitting into it. It's like weird to me that the narrative for Jordan Mason now in Minnesota is, well, Aaron Jones always gets injured and he's not a goal line back. And that's propped Jordan Mason up a lot. And I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But the trade to Washington or to San Fran for Brian Robinson was like, yeah, he's undraftable now. It's like, that's just not the case. I think he's going to be maybe a 30-40% back, but it's also an offense that's really good about getting the running back in the right positions.
Yeah.
As long as you are on Kyle Shanahan's good side, which
I hope you're right, and I really want that to be the case. And you mentioned as long as you're on Kyle Shanahan's good side, boy, he immediately was like, "That's my running back to these other guys to the back of the depth chart." As soon as he got there, which I thought was funny. We've never seen a coach do that with Christian McCaffrey, even though I think that he should be a 75% touch guy. Give him all the same targets, give him all the same usage and space. Just let Brian Robinson be the guy that throws his body into the defensive tackle, that tries to squeeze between the center and the guard. Like, don't make Christian McCaffrey do that all the time.
yep.
I think there's a world where this works. I also think it's just hard to predict that that is going to happen because we've never seen that common sense prevail with Christian McCaffrey. With that said, I'm still taking B-Rob with the hope that that does happen, because if it fails, it's what is your 9th round pick going to do for you in most cases anyway, right? Like, the upside with him, when you account for the standalone value potentially and just obviously the upside of a Christian McCaffrey injury, I think is still well worth the price.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'd still take him around 9 through 12, wherever he's going right now.
Yeah. Okay. Rashee Rice. We finally get the word. A 6-game suspension. I thought was real funny that the NFL leaked out, like, we're really hoping for 6 games, and then not an hour later, Rashee Rice accepts a 6-game suspension. So it turns out not rigged for the Chiefs in the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, the NFL went for 12, by the way, originally.
At least 10 to 12. But anyway, let's start with the Rashee Rice value, and then we can move to other Chiefs guys really quickly, if you'd like. I think I've seen a lot of I've seen people say Rashee Rice 4th round. I've seen people that I've sent to you say Rashee Rice 9th round. I think the truth is probably in the middle. 6th round is probably about where I'd feel comfortable. What say you?
Yeah, well, let's just look at ADP real quick. What 6th round starts at 40, 58, 60?
Sure. I mean, I think that's 5. That's 5 rounds. Yeah.
All right, so we'll go to 72. In 72, would you rather draft Jerry Jeudy or Rashee Rice on the 6th game? Okay.
Rashee Rice.
There's also Chris Olave and Rome Odunze. I won't waste our time with those two. And Ricky Pearsall. But then at 84, you have Deebo Samuel. You have Jordan Mason.
Rashee Rice.
Jordan Addison is still wide receiver 41.
Yeah, he should not be going behind Jordan Addison. And I know Addison had a productive season last year, and he'll be probably a top 24 guy when he's back, but Rashee Rice could potentially be a top 12 guy when he's back, and he was a top 5 guy before he got hurt last year.
Yeah, and I mean, this is baked in. You know what you're getting. You know you're not going to get him for 6 games. You know the bye is 4 weeks later. It hurts, but like I said at the start of this show, you don't win your league in those first 6 weeks. You really win it in the playoffs, and if you can get a value at a player who was going as high as the 2-3 turn just a couple of weeks ago, I think he was even fighting for very, very late, pick 20 in drafts. You should take it. And he'll come back. He'll be productive more than likely. And as long as he doesn't get injured, you know what you're getting. And if you build your room correctly, and you don't take other players like Chris Godwin or
that's the thing is you've got to insulate that pick with other safe picks and not take the risks and other guys who are going to miss time. And it sounds like Chris Godwin at least week 5. He's going to be out until, and I think you can also spend this positively in a couple ways. Number one, in this scenario, you're going to have Rashee Rice for the playoffs. I mean, injuries aside, of course, that anybody could get injured. But if the other scenario happened, that was not a given. He could have easily missed a week or 2 or more of the fantasy playoffs. So at least you have that clarity. You'll have him for the playoffs if you draft him. And honestly, if I don't draft him, Rashee Rice, you talk about giving advice, predicting week 2. If I'm 3-0, I'm trading for Rashee Rice. I'm telling every team that's 3-0 or 2-1 and feeling great about their build, go trade for Rashee Rice if the Rashee Rice team is 1-2, 0-3 and panicking.
Yeah. And again, depending on your league settings, a lot of leagues consider suspensions part of IR. So if you have an IR spot, you have a player to drop right into it. And then If you
I
draft
mean,
him,
Rashee Rice and Jalen Coker, and you've got top 30 receiver
there
potentially
you
the whole
go.
season. Could
Yeah,
happen.
draft Jalen Coker and draft Rasheed Rice, and you're good to go. What goes better than Coke and bad driving?
Okay, man, you are on fire with these today. Really, really going out with a bang for your last pop for a couple weeks. On
Or a
that note,
sniff?
on that note, Dalton, let's get to the real meat of the show here. Let's talk about our my guys. Pretty self-explanatory. These are guys that, whether it is just we like them a lot more than their current ADP, or just guys that we find ourselves leaving drafts with pretty consistently. Those that's what it means to be a my guy. We each have 5 of them today. I'll let you lead us off with your first my guy.
Yeah, this one, I think last year you might have had him as my guy, and I kind of poo pooed it, but I like it better this year. It's Calvin Ridley sitting at wide receiver 30.
Oh,
Uh,
yep.
so last year, despite like horrendous QB play from Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, he led the team with 76 receptions and over 1,000 yards. He was 15th in the NFL in target share of 26.1, and his red zone target share was 28.6. They haven't really changed the room or the coaching staff. In fact, the room might be getting worse. Even like some of the guys they drafted late that we thought might have something, like Xavier Restrepo, didn't even make the roster. So there's some major problems with other players generating, warranting high target shares on this team. Secondly, I think Cam Ward has kind of been unfortunately treated like a bad prospect because of the class that was
Yeah.
around him. But Cam Ward was like surprisingly or just very good at Miami. He was third in FBS in big throw rating. He had an average up the target of 15 yards, and his accuracy rating was second in the country. Like he was a very accurate quarterback who's willing to push the ball down the field, which are all things you like to see for your wide receiver one in Calvin Ridley. I think even if you don't think he's a great quarterback, it's very hard to be worse than some of Will Levis' moments and
Yeah.
definitely Mason Rudolph's moments, who's just a check down merchant.
Yeah.
So you have a guy who's willing to push the ball down the field, and Calvin Ridley fits the profile for all of that. So it's just difficult for me to think that wide receiver 30 is where he's going to end up. Like last season, he was at that and he had horrible play all around him.
Yeah. And the thing about Calvin Ridley, the reason why he was a my guy last year for me mainly was because remember back 2 years ago in Jacksonville, they just threw him out there at the X receiver. And, I said that's a terrible way to use Calvin Ridley. That's part of why he was so frustrating. I mean, even though he's going to have a good year this year, probably, he will frustrate you at times. He's kind of a frustrating player, but the ride was especially frustrating in Jacksonville. And that, I think, was one of the biggest reasons why. That did get remedied in Tennessee last year. It's just the situation was really bad. And he's still, I think he was low 30s last year, ADP, like mid to low 30s. So he still outperformed his wide receiver ADP last year. So you got the proper usage in Tennessee. He did have a bounce back year, just looking at some of his metrics, whether it's like yards after the catch, forced missed tackles, or just reception perception, looking at the separation data. And then, yeah, I mean, Cam Ward could be inconsistent, could be up and down, could have his rookie moments, and he is going to be better than what they had at quarterback last year. And that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. He finished wide receiver 27 last year. He's going wide receiver 30. There's almost no real outcome unless you're Doctor Strange and Avengers looking for the one outcome that Cam Ward is worse than the quarterback play they had last year.
Yep, agreed. Okay. My first guy, going back to Carolina one last time today, and that's Chuba Hubbard. He's the RB 19 in ADP. I have him as the RB 15. And I just I can't quite figure out what the deal is here. And I think it really is just he has the baggage of being a backup, being like okay for his first couple years, not anything special when he got the opportunities. Last year, it wasn't just opportunity. He took a legitimate step forward as a player last year and was really, really good. And the offense, of course, was pretty good too. I mean, they added Rico Dowdle, but I don't know. I like people are worried about Rico Dowdle taking away passing game stuff. And here's the thing. Chuba was that's not really where he made his money. In fact, if you look at his splits, and I don't have like the ability to share my screen as easily here as before. But Hayden Winks put out a pretty good tweet the other day. Chuba only had 8 receptions on third downs last year. And what's actually much more important for him is game script and if the Panthers can not be terrible. Um, in games that were between 0 and 7 points, the final margin, he had 122 carries and 7 touchdowns. In games where they got beat by 15 or more points, which is also an equal amount, 6 games, he had 74 carries for 351 yards and 2 touchdowns. So just if the Panthers can be a better team like we expect this year and just be around in some of these games, that will make things a lot easier for him and will more than offset any damage that Rico Dowdle does in the passing game. I mean, there were only 15 players last year who had above 20 PPR points 6 times, and Chuba Hubbard was one of them. Like, improved offensive line. We think an improved offense. Year 2 with this coordinator. We talked about Rico Dowdle last week with Dallas. I think he's just a guy. I think Chuba's a lot better. Like, nobody really threatening the bulk of his work in this backfield. I don't see how he's worse than RB12. I mean, RB15 that I have him. RB19's ADP. He finished last year at the RB12 in total points and in points per game.
Yeah, I mean, I like this. Obviously, I'm a fan of the Carolina Panthers offense as a whole this season. I think Bryce Young in the second half of last year took a step forward under a new coaching staff. Again, it's a really solid offensive line with a really good interior. If the offense is just more productive, he's going to be a benefit of that. And we think Ted McMillan's going to give that opportunity along with our boy, Jalen Coker. And then you just add in the fact that the defense is going to keep the script a little tighter this year. They lost, he's their star defensive tackle. He didn't play all of last season because he was hurt. Whoever it is, they have their star defensive tackle back. The team invested heavily in this draft in defense. Like overall, the team should be better as a whole, and that's going to be more reps for him. And Rico Dowdle, like he is just a guy. I mean,
yeah, and like if Trevor Etienne is a factor, it's like going to be the pass game. Where like if Chuba gives up some pass game work, but they can play more competitive games and he gets more opportunities just to run the ball, I'm okay with that trade off. In projecting him as the RB15.
Yeah, I think he's going to do great. And then when Jonathan Brooks is back next year, we can debate about if he'll still be good. That's what really matters to me.
Okay, you're second, my guy.
I think we share this one, but I'm just going to jump to the Jets and go ahead and get this one out of the way because it's the most head-scratching ADP I can find.
Yeah.
But it is Breece Hall, who is sitting at RB15, going at the end of the third round right now. Doesn't really make sense to me. Last year, he was fourth among all running backs with 76 receptions. Despite everything else going on there, he averaged 4.5 yards per carry on 223 attempts. He's still only 23 years old, which like he's younger than some players like Ja'Cory Crosby-Barrett that people are touting. And the Jets have gone and they've improved their offensive line significantly this season. Let's get the concerns out of the way because I think they're pretty overrated. The first concern is that Aaron Glenn has talked up Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis.
And specifically Braylon Allen.
Yes. Okay. I mean, honestly, that's my answer. Like Aaron Glenn comes from Detroit, which used 2 running backs supremely efficient.
Yeah.
If Breece
Guess
Hall,
what? Everybody uses 2 running backs, unless you're the Eagles with Saquon Barkley or the 49ers with Christian McCaffrey. Everybody has somebody else in the backfield who is at best an annoyance, and at worst, they actually matter for fantasy.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about this guy later, but there's a lot of like trash talking Justin Fields' ability to manage the offense because in preseason passing camp, he's like 5 of 14 on some days. If you actually watched the New York Jets last season, you would understand how horrendous the offense really was, and it was terrible. And the improved offensive line, the adults in the room, which mostly means taking Aaron Rodgers out of the room lead to a lot more opportunity for Brees Hall just to be in a fully functioning offense. And the improved offensive line play is going to give him the rushing lanes. He's not going to lose his job to Braylon Allen. That's patently absurd.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe Braylon Allen does play 35% of the snaps this year. Maybe that happens. And if it did, I still think Brees Hall will outperform this ADP. I mean, I have my RB8. I think you have him in a very similar range as well. I went back and looked last year because I was curious. Braylon Allen only played above 50% of the snaps one time last year, and it was a game that Brees Hall did not play. So, like, just call me crazy. I need to see him actually play. I know different coaching staff. I get all that. He's a fun player, like big, strong, fast. I get all that. He's not the same caliber player as Brees Hall, who I think is one of the best 10 running backs. That's being, I think, pretty like I could be a lot more bold than that.
Yeah, well, and I'm not going to compare situations, but if the Jets offense comes out and is good, this could be very similar to what happened to Saquon, where he had several seasons in such a bad, shallow offense that wasn't running big boy concepts that he was never able to shine because he was the focal point of every defensive possession. If Brees Hall can be part of an offense where you don't have your wide receiver one coming out and saying they were checking the plays he didn't know, there's a high likelihood that he's just going to be more efficient on those carries and be able to be the player we know he is, which I mean, I think he's probably a top 6 RB in the NFL. I'll go out on a limb and say that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, what's Aaron Rodgers famous for? Throwing the ball inside the 5-yard line. So, like, theoretically, there's going to be more rushing attempts inside the 5. Now, will Justin Fields take some of those? Probably. Will Braylon Allen take some of those? Maybe. But the argument that I don't hear a lot of people making for Brees Hall is the one that is like a tale as old as time with running quarterbacks. Running quarterbacks open up rushing lanes for the running back all the time.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen. Like, yes, the quarterback is going to keep it sometimes. And there may be some plays where Fields scores a touchdown where like, oh man, like I wish that were Brees. Like I wish it would have gone the Brees. But there's also going to be more rushing lanes, I feel like, for Brees this year too. And he was like the RB 18 or 19 last year, which again, that's like right around where he's ranked right now. I feel like that, as long as he's healthy, that's just like the absolute floor outcome for Brees Hall in my mind. Whereas RB8, that's not the ceiling because we've literally see him have an RB, I think 2 or 3 overall season. So I'm with you. This is one of the more perplexing ADPs, and I think like the my best explanation. I mean, we have the hype for the other guys. I think it really just comes down to uh, people saying either I touted Brees Hall in the first round last year or I did take Brees Hall in the first round last year. And he did about the worst thing you can do. He didn't miss games and he underperformed. So he like never let you off the hook as a fantasy manager if you had him. And I just think there's probably hard feelings from that.
Yeah. Well, just to bring back to your point about rushing quarterbacks, this is from Graham Barfield over at Fantasy Points. But going back to 2010, offenses where the quarterback had at least 5 designed rushes a game, so offenses that had running quarterbacks, their running back one on average scored 4.2 more points per game than teams that had quarterbacks that did not have 5 designed rush attempts or more. So like a pretty full suite of data to say like it's good to have a rushing quarterback. And I know those two concepts are hard for some people to hold in their mind. Like, no, the quarterback's going to take all the runs away and the running back's never going to do anything. That's not the case. It gives the offense a lot more creative ways to address the way the game goes about and when their running back gets it and makes the linebackers second guess which hole they need to hit.
Yeah. And it's funny, like Braylon Allen's ADP is RB43. If we're so sure he's playing 40% of the snaps, why is he RB43, guys? Like, why is he? So that's the other thing I don't get is like, why is Allen's ADP not come up as Brees Hall's has come down? I just, this whole thing is confusing. And I think if you can start your draft with, let's say you pick early first, you take Jahmyr Gibbs, you take a receiver you like late second, you take at the beginning of the third, Brees Hall, and you've got a legit wide receiver one, like low end. You've got a legit running back one, high end, and then you've got, I think, an RB1 as your RB2. Like that type of build is like the dream build. I think Brees Hall, just when you look at your team after you're done drafting, you're going to feel so great with that guy on your RB2 spot if that's how things work out.
Yeah, and this is no disrespect to this player, but Brees Hall is currently one spot above Alvin Kamara in full ADP and running back ADP. And I have 1,000 more concerns about the Saints offense, offensive line, play calling than I do about anything in New York. And I guess the Alvin Kamara argument people are probably making is, well, who else is going to get the ball in that offense? And we've done that a billion times, and we've have enough data to say that that's a very bad argument to have in fantasy football.
Yeah, but I mean, Kamara's still an awesome player, and I don't have any problem with Kamara's ADP. It's more of a problem where
No,
of
I agree with
Brees'
Kamara's
ADP.
ADP. I just disagree that those
Right.
two should be in your same mind when you're picking a running back.
Right. So my next guy, I think you'll agree with me here, going out on a limb, is Patrick Mahomes. QB6, QB6 overall. That's also where I have him, 57 overall, in ADP. So I'm not necessarily saying like, oh, you have to take him ahead of Burrow, Lamar. Although I would think I have him QB6 right now, but if I were faced with that decision in draft rooms, I probably, as a Chiefs fan, wouldn't allow myself to take Burrow over Mahomes. But he's just somebody I find myself leaving a lot of drafts with. We talked about QB7 being a terrible investment, and that's because QB6 is the last of this top tier, or like tier 1 and tier 1.5 of quarterbacks, if you want to look at it that way. And Mahomes represents the cheapest of that bunch. And I mean, this is going to give me a chance to kind of rant about the Mahomes narratives for the last little bit. But, I understand the struggles from a fantasy perspective. Didn't have that. It was only 3 or 4 top 12 finishes last year. Maybe not quite that, but it was not that many. And he definitely hurt you if you drafted him last year. No question about that. I just don't think people are talking enough about the circumstances that actually led to that season last year, and the circumstances that the Chiefs offense on paper have built for themselves heading into this year. I mean, obviously, let's start at the left tackle. There was none. They started a rookie a game, played him about 2.5 quarters of week 2, and then benched him. Never saw him again the rest of the year. Insert Wande Morris, who is not even their swing tackle this year. He's the next guy. So below average tackle. Everyone has probably seen the clip of Mahomes coming off the field angry after Max Crosby sacked him, where he's screaming, it's the same bleeping move, same guy, over and over. And that was the whole season. And why that's important, obviously, just you don't want him to be under that pressure. But the deep ball was non-existent last year for a lot of reasons. But I think first and foremost, it was because there was no protection, no time. They couldn't let anything develop down the field. I think probably if you were to point to a flaw, like the biggest flaw in Mahomes' game, is that when he does start to not trust his line, he gets happy feet. Like you saw that in the Falcons game specifically, is the first one that I remember. I mean, he missed Xavier Worthy on, like that drag route because he just was so anxious in the pocket, and that continued. And when that happens, his eyes drop. He doesn't see things develop, or he doesn't let things develop. And so that was a real big part of the problem with the deep passing game. Oh, by the way, Rashee Rice gets hurt week 4. We mentioned he was a top 5 receiver before he got hurt. Hollywood Brown, who was supposed to be wide receiver 2, got hurt before the season even started. I think like the first play in preseason, actually. He got hurt. Travis Kelce was a 35-year-old who had the worst season of his career, like still a perfectly good season, but the worst season in his career. And I am buying into the Travis Kelce bounce back this season. I'm not expecting like 1,200 yards, but I do think we are going to see an improved Travis Kelce, a quicker Travis Kelce. I mean, the move he made in the preseason game against the Bears, it was at least against the Bears starters. He didn't do that to make a guy miss one time last season until the playoffs. So I think you're going to see a better Travis Kelce. And then Xavier Worthy was thrust into the wide receiver one role, and he just wasn't ready for that. And we did see him improve a lot down the stretch. And obviously, people will make fun and remember the Super Bowl. You know, the game was already over, and this is when Worthy's getting the deep shots. But if you just go back and just ISO cam Xavier Worthy, he was getting open that whole game. It was just Mahomes had no chance to let the play develop or even look his way half the time. I remember when Tom Brady went through a similar stretch midway through his career where it wasn't even midway, it was further along in his career than this for Mahomes because we were already playing fantasy by this point. So go Tom Brady, he's never gonna be usable in fantasy again, like never gonna be a top 12 guy. Turns out, get him some better weapons, get him a more functional offense, like an offense that he does not have to backpack like Mahomes had to last year. And Tom Brady is once again great for fantasy. And I just think Mahomes, if you don't think he's the best player in the world, you're either trolling, you're standing another guy who you're a fan of, which I can respect, or you're just dumb. One of those three. If the best player in the world is going to have a great season for fantasy again at some point. And I was looking at my DraftKings portfolio the other day. I have 2 bets on Mahomes MVP. Did not realize I made 2 bets. I have a bet that I just made on FanDuel Futures, Mahomes over 4,000 yards. That was just sitting right there, looking me in the face. And I also made like the tiniest little bet on Mahomes to break the NFL record for passing yards. So I'm just all in on the Mahomes revenge tour this season. I could not have been more impressed with what I saw in the preseason and the variety of ways that the Chiefs were drawing up deep and intermediate passes. It's not just going to be the vertical stuff that's back this year. It's going to be the deep crossers, and the Chiefs are going to pop a lot more big plays, and I can't wait. Okay, thanks for indulging me for 3 minutes of my ranting there, Dalton.
Yeah, I mean, I like Mahomes. He's 22 spots lower than Joe Burrow, which is the biggest gap in quarterback that you see in the drafts. So it goes from the top 5 kind of players people consider elite to Mahomes, and then he's 11 spots off of Baker. And you're taking a bet on high risk, high reward here in the sense that if Mahomes is 4 years ago Mahomes, and if the offense fits like that, he's easily QB1. They're going to be incredibly explosive. You didn't even mention last year they lose Pacheco.
Yeah.
In a couple of games, there were some passing concepts Pacheco was in that looked like old Chiefs. There were a couple of wheel routes. Those are things you just simply.
Ooh, and Brashard Smith is going to have some of those this year,
Yeah.
let me tell you.
And those are plays you just simply can't run with Kareem Hunt. He's just not that player anymore. Losing Rice for 6 weeks hurts, but it's not the end of the world. Once Jalen Royals is in here, he seems to be like a player who can step in for this offense as well. Xavier Worthy got better as the season went on. His target share went up game to game.
And Tyquan Thornton's a guy they can just throw out as the sacrificial X, do the dirty work, and occasionally actually beat his man downfield. Just an upgraded Justin Watson, if you will.
Yeah. So, I mean, all in all, I like the take on Mahomes. Again, like after Mahomes, like you're betting on guys like Bo Nix, who I have questions if he can repeat that touchdown percentage. You have Brock Purdy, who doesn't have anybody to throw to. You have Dak Prescott, who has one of the weirdest coaching trees in the NFL on his team right now.
Cowboys might have to score a lot of points this year.
Yeah, might have to. And I've seen Dak in hurry up when they need to score a lot of points, and it leads to a lot of picks.
Although who says the Cowboys won't use those picks and go get somebody? Jerry also said that today.
Yes. Yeah, sure. You're going to get somebody a week before the season starts. Good luck getting
Maybe they could go get Micah Parsons for 2 firsts.
Yeah. But yeah, and then you even think about going back to when the Chiefs played the Ravens in week 1, which was the closest the Chiefs had to a healthy offense all season. There was a lot of talk about the Chiefs offense coming out of that Ravens game because of how good the Ravens defense is and what the Chiefs could be. And then all the injuries started to pile up, and the narrative changed pretty quickly to, Mahomes is now just a check down merchant. 3,000 of his yards came behind the line of scrimmage. Well, all of that was all suspect because that line was so poor on the left side that they could not scheme up anything to keep him safe in the pocket.
I mean, what happens if you put a league average quarterback at quarterback for the Chiefs last year? Like, how bad is it? It's probably pretty bad. Like, Andy Reid could mitigate the damage a little bit, but there's only so much he could do with how everything was kind of caving in on the Chiefs offense last
Yeah, there's no chance that it could be any better.
year. Okay, your next guy, Dalton.
I've realized that I have two Niners and two Jets on here, but we're going to go ahead and jump to the Jets player. I did want to get a quarterback in here, and the quarterback I picked is currently going as QB 14 at pick 114. And I really disagree with this, and it's Justin Fields. I don't think Justin Fields is a world beater. I was one of the biggest naysayers when it came to Justin Fields being drafted, I think, 6th overall 2 years ago. But what I do know is that Justin Fields is a bit of a cheat code at fantasy. In 2023, he rushed for 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. Like, it's pretty insane stat line for him. Last year, he averaged 21.3 points as a starter for the Steelers. All that happened was they didn't want him because they didn't fit the way Arthur Smith runs his offense. And he put a lot of points up fantasy-wise, but he's not a good quarterback. The difference is I think the Jets are pretty committed to the situation. Their depth chart doesn't really have anybody underneath it. And you're getting
– yeah, and I mean, if it gets bad enough, they'll always find somebody else, but I don't think that will be the case.
Yeah, and at QB 14, I mean, he can legitimately give you QB 1 weeks with his rushing upside.
Yeah.
And offensively, things haven't really changed from what he had last year in Pittsburgh to the year before in Chicago. He has one really good running back, and he has one really good wide receiver, and that's about the extent of the offense. So I'm expecting similar numbers where he's going to put up, QB 7, QB 6 points, but you're getting him at a big discount, and you're getting him under guys like, yes, Jared Goff will be really consistent for you, but Justin Fields gives you that X factor on your team that's going to more than likely result in you winning some weeks just out of what he's doing. And last, I do really like Aaron Glenn. I actually think it's going to be a really good coaching staff for them. I think they're going to be really effective in how they use him, and they're going to be really effective in how they do this. Granted, Justin Fields ran all over Aaron Glenn's defense because he's a man coverage guy, and Aaron Glenn probably saw that and thought there was more to it. But I think that the Aaron Glenn-led offense is going to be productive enough that Justin Fields is going to have a couple of those stinker games that we know he's in them, like 8 points, but he's also going to have a couple of those 30-point games where he rushes for 100 yards and he gets you a touchdown. So I think at his price tag, he's too low for what his upside is. And this is my sacrificial Anthony Richardson conversation that he would have likely been on here had I not been stolen that opportunity away by him getting benched for Daniel
Jones. Yeah, in the same way that Fields will help Brees will help Fields. I mean, teams will definitely key on Brees Hall and Justin Fields. Like, you think back to last year, Jaylen Warren was hurt at the beginning of the year. And so not only did he miss time, but he just wasn't himself quite for a little bit when he came back. And that was most of when Justin Fields started. So it was pretty much just Najee Harris back there with them. A little bit of a different animal at running back next to him. And a team that it seems like they're going to be pretty committed to running the football. I'm with you. I don't think Fields is the world beater, but he can run the ball. He'll pass it well enough, and he'll have some very nice fantasy days, and you don't have to take him as a starter. So certainly can't beat that, I don't think, at quarterback 14 or whatever it is in drafts. My next guy, probably hinted at this a little bit last week, and that's Travis Hunter. And I've moved him up a couple spots in my ranks since we initially did ranks. I think I'd have him more at like wide receiver 27, 26 type of range. He's going wide receiver 32. But I'm just taking him every single time at that cost. Like, all of the signals. And think back to our Travis Hunter conversation before the NFL draft, before the Browns traded the pick, when we thought the Browns were going to take him. And my number one most interesting storyline of the draft was, okay, let me listen to Kevin Stefanski talk about Travis Hunter and how he's going to be used and what his role is going to be, specifically how much offense versus how much defense. And of course, we don't know the exact answer to that question. We don't know the exact split, but we've heard nothing but this guy is going to play offense. He's an offense first player. So I have no reason to believe he's not going to be an 80% wide receiver at the very least. Could be more, could be 85%. And then you think about him as a prospect. So the way Harmon describes him is not an elite route runner yet, still very good, but just like some technical things to clean up. But he is an elite separator because he's just a special kind of athlete, quick twitch guy. This dude was 92nd, 97th, and 97th percentile across the board against man, zone, and press coverage in college. Harmon has him as his wide receiver 3 overall in his stacked prospect rankings from 2021 to 2025. So that does include Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, like Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbor, all these guys. He's 3 overall. Like that is the tier of receiver prospect that we're talking about. He's listed as a starter at receiver and a backup on defense. So I just feel like the ADP right now, there's a lot of there has to be nervousness with the defense and how much he'll play there and what kind of impact that'll have. And I just like, sure, if he was going wide receiver 20, I'd have concerns about it. But you're getting a guy, I can't think of there's maybe a couple of guys you could make the case at 30 or below who you could easily see going inside the top 12 at receiver next year and maybe even higher than that. And Hunter is definitely one of those guys for me. And we love the player, we love the offense, we love the role. I mean, he's going to have that slot role. He's going to be able to play off Brian Thomas Jr. I'm really excited to see how Liam Cohen's going to use those guys off of each other. And I mentioned this with the Baker bust conversation. The Bucks were really, really good in the screen game last year. Well, Travis Hunter, Dalton, you and I saw him take about a 55-yard screen pass to the house on a crazy play last year in person against KU. Like that dude is elite after the catch. And I'm just taking that upside swing every time at that point in the draft.
Yeah, and just truthfully, you don't trade 2 firsts for a corner. You just don't in the NFL. Every GM, and I think James Gladstone is a good GM, knows that you need a really good offense to be a competitive team. And that is what Travis Hunter was taken for. Sure, he might play some snaps at corner. Didn't look good in the preseason. Maybe just make him a full-time offensive player and see what happens. I don't know.
If he came out and it was like he might play defense 5 plays a game, he's immediately going to be ranked as wide receiver 18 in the week 2 ranks, like week 3 ranks, if that happens.
Yeah, and Tetoro McMillan is going 12 spots above him, and there are still questions on McMillan's profile. There aren't many questions on Travis Hunter's profile except for people who have a problem with how Colorado ran their offense. But it's not a gimmicky Mickey Mouse Art Briles offense that we've seen before. And
it's not Tennessee.
No, it's not Tennessee. It's not Baylor. Looking at you, Corey Coleman. And you said it all. He has who I still think is a top 15 skill quarterback in the NFL, and Trevor Lawrence. He is not being thrust into like most first-round wide receivers into that starting role. He's going to get the level set expectations that come from having BTJ drawing the coverage because we saw what he did last year. Diami Brown is a good wide receiver 3 on this offense too, who can help alleviate that. They have Brenton Strange and Travis Etienne, who are effective pass catchers. So it's not like he's being asked to.
But Shul Tootin, if he's in there, obviously is another effective pass catcher.
LaQuint Allen, apparently, people are saying. But you put all that together, and then you put in Liam Cohen, who was tracking last season to have 2 top 12 wide receivers who played 2 entirely different positions, which you could easily give Hunter the Godwin role, easily give PTJ the Mike Evans role, and have a pretty good one-to-one comparison there. It's just hard for me to make the argument in any way but that we're drafting scared because we're scared he's going to play a little bit of defense here and there. But this team is going to want him on offense, and they need him on offense because Diami Brown is no wide receiver 2.
Yeah. No, I just like, in what other circumstance could you get the guy who I think most people had as the very clear wide receiver 1 and talk about this guy as a generational wide receiver? Like, think about where Malik Neighbors, where Marvin Harrison Jr. were going in drafts last year. think about where Ted McMillan is going this year. Like, you're getting the wide receiver one behind a fellow rookie who I think he is quite a bit better than, and that's not even a shot at Ted McMillan. Like, just an unbelievable upside swing. This is like the league winning pick if it hits is Travis Hunter at this price. If he
Yeah.
fulfills even like if he's 85% of the potential highest ceiling of Travis Hunter, this is a home run at this spot.
The Jags just can't jag again.
Well, that is probably my biggest concern. Okay, your next guy.
We'll jump to my 49ers. First one is George Kittle, who's currently going as the tight end 3. I really think he should be fighting for tight end 2. And no disrespect to Brock Bowers, but I still don't like how high Brock Bowers is going. And it's probably the best tight end to draft in fantasy right now. Over the last 3 seasons, he's averaged 14.9 PPR points per game, which would put him right at wide receiver 16 if you're just doing that. The wide receiver 16 goes 8 spots ahead of George Kittle. He is a career 12.8 yards per reception. Like, he is legitimately the biggest play at tight end you can get at this point of any player. Over the last 2 seasons, he's only missed 4 games in total. There used to be durability concerns with him. I don't really see that anymore. Going back to last season, he had 11 games over 15 PPR points. Like, that is insane production out of the tight end position. And then you look at this wide receiver room, and we'll talk about another guy here in a minute, but it's not as deep as it has been in years past. They lose Deebo Samuel. We don't know when Ayuk is going to be back. We don't know when Jennings is going to play. Like, there's so many questions that he is going to dominate the target share in their passing game, along with maybe 1 or 2 other players.
Yeah, and we love Pearsall, but as far as proven NFL studs as pass catchers, it's Christian McCaffrey and it's George Kittle right now.
Yep.
And you're not going to give Christian McCaffrey a 45% target share. So it could be George Kittle 35% target share for 8 weeks. It could be that.
And he missed 2 games last season. When he returned from injury, both the following week in those games, he was tied in 4 in both weeks. Like, his injuries haven't lingered with him. And his only bad games last year, he were against Arizona, where he didn't play a full game. He played 29% of the snaps. And against Buffalo in a snow game, where he scored 1 point. If you remember that game, Brock Purdy was also horrendous.
Yep, that's the Christian McCaffrey gets injured game too.
Yes. So all things considered, it's just impossible for me. Like, I've taken him so much. I think I have like 40% exposure to him on Underdog. Like, he's late enough in drafts that if I'm looking to go elite tight end, he is the one player I'm taking. And he is the only tight end in like the top 5 that I feel confident in his return. Like, Brock Bowers, I just have questions on the Chip Kelly offense. I think he'll be a really good player. Don't get me wrong. Trey McBride, I've just never really been a fan of Trey McBride. I'm not going to lie to you. And then
I am a fan of Trey McBride.
And then just right underneath him, you have Sam Laporta and Travis Kelce. Sam Laporta, fine player, but Travis Kelce, we talked about last season, we don't know what he's going to return to. And then you really get into a bunch of like dart throws. You got Hawk, Andrews, Ingram, Njoku. Like, this is the surest thing at tight end we have this year, and that's why I'm taking him.
Yeah, and like, I mean, you said it. I don't have him ranked tight end 1. I think I actually have him tight end 3. So like, I'm fine with the tight end 3 rank. What I'm not fine with, though, is him being treated like he's not on the same tier as Trey McBride, and definitely not on the same tier as Brock Bowers. Those 3 guys should all be coming off the board in the same round of fantasy drafts, in my opinion, or like within 5-10 picks, at the end of one round and beginning of the next round. Like, George Kittle was tight end 1 last year.
Yeah. And he's 20 picks after Bowers and 11 picks after McBride.
There was no sign of decline at all with him last year. And that would be the only argument for him not to have a legit case for tight end 1 this year, because the volume, it's going to be there, and it could really be there for the first part of the season. And that has always kind of been the thing with Kittle, and the thing that's probably held him back a little bit is the volume isn't what it could be all the time because he does so much blocking. They might have to adjust how they sort that out at the beginning of the season with Kittle if the receiver room is as depleted as it looks like it could be, depending on what happens with Jawan Jennings. And even if Jennings is there, I think it would still behoove them without Debo in the fold to get George Kittle involved a lot as a passer. And they will. Like, he was not only tight end one, he averaged 13.9 points per game. Brock Bowers is next at 12.1. So he was almost 2 points ahead of Brock Bowers in points per game last season. Missed 2 games. Bowers didn't miss any, and he still outscored him by 0.2 points last year. So unreal season. Very great looking setup heading into this.
You gotta love him. Who do you have next, Evan?
So my last guy is Jackson Smith and Jigba. And this is another one where I just don't fully understand why he's projected to be, I don't want to say so much worse, but when you go from wide receiver 9, which is what he finished, or wide receiver 8, excuse me, which is what he finished, to being ranked at wide receiver 14, I feel like that's a pretty big difference that early in the draft. I have him at wide receiver 9. So I've recently bumped him ahead of Lad McConkey and Brian Thomas Jr. Those guys are right next up in the ranks for me. Obviously, no DK Metcalf. He is the clear-cut wide receiver 1. Cooper Kupp, not nearly as good as DK Metcalf, who I think we have issues with, but DK Metcalf at this point is a better player than Cooper Kupp, who could not command targets last year down the stretch from a quarterback who he is very, very familiar with in Matthew Stafford. So JSN, I think really the reason why the hype on him isn't like peak top 10 receiver type of hype is because he kind of gets pigeonholed as the slot only receiver. And I just don't think that's true. I mean, you look at the second half of last season, even if he was like a slot only guy with like a legit outside guy in DK Metcalf, he finished as the wide receiver 8 last year. And that's despite scoring in single digits in 6 of his first 8 games. The second half of the season, he really blew up. He was the wide receiver 5, weeks 8 through 17, behind only Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra, and Justin Jefferson. That's it. Those are the only guys who ranked ahead of him. Here's how I know he's not just a slot-only guy. He was actually much better against man coverage than he was against zone coverage last year. He's like above average against zone coverage. But he led the NFL from weeks 10 on in 4.96 yards per route run against man coverage last season. And he was in the 84th. Oh, no, sorry. I'll find it. I'll find that number in a minute. He's very highly ranked against man coverage in reception perception. Like in the second round, I don't think twice about drafting this guy mid-second round. I think the upside is top 10 receiver. I mean, you look at the Clint Kubiak offenses the last couple of years, the X receivers have had some really, really big years. And yes, the first one is Justin Jefferson, his big rookie breakout year. Okay, Jefferson's going to have a big year with anybody calling plays. Cool. Brandon Ayuk, who, is a great player when he's healthy, but had not had the production to match the talent until Kubiak got there. And then you look at last year, Rashid Shaheed, until he got hurt. And then inexplicably, Marquez Valdez-Scantling down the stretch last season, who just got cut by the Seattle Seahawks, I'm pretty sure.
Torrey Horton sleeper.
That's right. Was awesome down the stretch. And he only played 2 games without DK Metcalf last year. He was 6 for 69, and then he went 7 for 180 and 2 touchdowns, and that was with 78 yards negated by penalty. So just an insane game. And you look at kind of the Kubiak, McVay offense, they've run a lot of condensed formation stuff with 3 receivers, but he's also going to be doing a lot of the deep crossers and even the vertical stuff down the field because he's good against press coverage. He's good against man coverage, and he's very good running slants, digs, and post routes. He is going to eat deep over the middle of the field and just add a big play element to an already consistent guy on the inside in JSN. So I love the value for him this year. 81st percentile against man coverage. Finally found it at the very bottom of my notes here. I love the value for JSN. I love the player, and I think he was the breakout receiver last year. I think he's going to take another step. He just has to repeat what he did last year to outkick this value.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Jason. I like the Clint Kubiak offense. If you don't remember, after week 2 last year, everybody thought Clint Kubiak was going to be the hottest head coaching candidate on the market. Clearly, the Saints fell off,
Yep.
but he kept that offense moving despite a QB carousel between Spencer Rattler and the Purdue quarterback. Don't remember his name, which shows you a lot about how we feel about the rest of that team.
Yep.
Sam Darnold is a bit of a question mark, but they've improved their offensive line, which was why that passing offense was so bad to start the season. Geno Smith was third among quarterbacks in pressure rate last year, just because the offensive line was so misput together. You throw in the fact that, I mean, Cooper Kupp just isn't a threat to his targets, and I think they're going to move around. They're going to run really condensed formations. That's how Clint Kubiak does it, which is going to give him some ideal matchups against linebackers, and that means he's going to be able to excel in that route running, which we know he's so great at. And he just comes from pedigree. I don't want to logo scout, but he comes from Ohio State, and they really haven't missed for a while when it comes to wide receiver. So, yeah, I like all the things about it, and I'm cautiously optimistic that Sam Darnold was a reclamation project that got fixed, and he can be a, QB 16 through 18 in NFL skill. And that's all you really need for this offense.
Yep. Very possible. All right, Dalton, your last buy guy is an honorable mention for me. Tell us about your second San Francisco player.
Yeah, it's Ricky Pearsall. Just want to remind people of a few things. He got shot. Okay. I think that's really important based on how people have been talking about him.
Yeah.
So last season, he obviously doesn't play the first 6 games. He comes back, he plays 3 games. But from week 10 on, which is his bye onward, where he only played 6 of the 9 games, and 3 of those games he played, he was a top 14 wide receiver.
Yeah.
In those games, charting him from week 10 onwards, he led rookies in separation. That's beating out players like Brian Thomas Jr. Granted, he beat them in separation because he played less games, but he beat them in separation. He had great scores against man and zone coverage, according to fantasy points. His yards per route run was 2.93, which is elite. This guy comes from Florida, where at Florida, he averaged 22.8 yards per reception. And this is an offense that is starved right now for star power. And this isn't really just an argument for, well, he'll be really good till Jawan Jennings and Brandon Ayuk return. I think he could easily win the room. Brandon,
that's why I wanted to ask you, because I think outside of the people who just throw out the numbers from the whole season, ignoring the context of when he first came back, that is the other negative argument you hear, is that, well, he's only going to be good until Ayuk and Jennings are back, and then what is he down the stretch when you need him the most?
Yeah, and I don't like making these arguments, but it's just it's a real thing in San Francisco. Jawan Jennings is in contract negotiations, and the GM and Shanahan are pretty lockstep there. And the GM seems pretty upset with Jawan Jennings making these contract negotiations. And I wouldn't put it past Shanahan to lower him on the totem pole. Brandon Ayuk, before injury last year, looked awful. Like, he was a terrible player. He was not the player that he had been previously. He's now coming back from an injury, has not practiced since the injury. And I don't know when he's going to return to form. And I drafted him almost nowhere in drafts because I don't know when he will return to form.
Yeah, I mean, it's very realistic that this year is just a wash for Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah. And Jawan Jennings kind of feels like a flash in the pan. Like, really what I think happened last year was there was no one else. He knew the system, and Shanahan's a good schemer. That's not.
I think he's a solid player, but like Pearsall to me is a better and much more explosive player who, I mean, he's great against man and press man coverage. Like, this is a dude that can get open, and like college, he can get open on big boy routes down the field too. And that'll be a little bit of a different look for this offense. They've had that dimension a little bit with Ayuk, but there's no Debo anymore in this passing attack. So I'll be interested just to see how this offense kind of schemes it up this year.
Yeah. And where he's going in drafts, Jordan Addison, Debo Samuel, Mark Andrews, Chris Godwin, Steph Diggs, and Cooper Kupp are all right there on the list. I'm taking him over all those players like in a heartbeat. And even going up above him, Tyrone Tracy, I'm taking him above. Jalen Waddle, I like Pearsall more right now. Jerry Judy is going 10 spots above. That's the second time I've shit on him this. George Pickens going 20 spots above. I like Pearsall better. I feel like he has easy top 30 wide receiver upside, and top 24 and up is something that is definitely in his wheelhouse. You have to remember there was a major investment made. He was a first round pick by the
Yeah.
49ers last year. He ran a 4.41. He's 6'1, 215. Like, he's a big boy that runs fast. He is going to be good in this offense, and he has fully recovered from being shot.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw someone on Twitter be like, are we sure that Ricky Pearsall is actually good? It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's actually good, but also don't use the whole season sample size to make the argument that he's not. You have to dismiss, like, yes, I get people joke like, okay, at what point can we say he was better from the gunshot wound? Is it exactly right here when he got better? It's like, yeah, I get you can make that fit your narrative how you want, but you do legitimately have to give him at least probably a month to get in shape and find a rhythm and find a connection with his quarterback.
Yeah. Well, and this is the same offense that had people saying Brandon Ayuk was dead to rights, and then he figured it out for a bit. And I haven't even thought about this. This is brand new. We've heard of the shower narrative. We've heard of the breakfast narrative. He's on the same team as Brian Robinson, who was also shot. Talk about the PTSD narrative. These two could really show out for them.
There's no better way for Dalton to close his 2025 draft season out on the half point per podcast than that. So I won't even ask for any more. On that note, that is going to do it for episode 176 of the half point per podcast. Give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at half point per pod. Subscribe on YouTube at half point per podcast to catch us live. The link to all of those things will be in the show notes. As always, the show is available anywhere you find your podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Good luck in all of your drafts this weekend. For those of you who have not already finished all of your drafts, I know many of you will probably be drafting at least one team over Labor Day weekend. And I will talk to you in some capacity